Welcome to the Common Good Faith Podcast and live stream. It is Wednesday, and so we're talking faith. We've got our panel of hosts, Stephany Spaulding and Laura Truax, and a guest with us today. The Reverend Dr. Jacqui Lewis is with us to talk about her new book. Jacqui is the senior minister of Middle Collegiate Church and the author of the new book, Fierce Love. She is also the first African-American, first woman to serve as senior minister in the Collegiate Church, which was founded way back in 1628. Woo! Yeah. But we're going to get into the book and have a conversation around that. But I want to pass it to my co-hosts. Stephany, why don't you introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. It's so wonderful to be back with you on this Wednesday in November. We are in full effect in fall in many places around the country. And again, just happy to be talking faith and doing the good work. I am Reverend Dr. Stephany Rose Spaulding, pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church out of Colorado Springs. And I'm going to pass it to our co-host, Laura Truax.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Stephany. So good to be with you all. I've been out for a few weeks. Glad to be back. I am Laura Truax. I'm the senior pastor at LaSalle Street Church in Chicago, and have long been a Jacqui Lewis fan. So really looking forward to chatting with her, and especially around her new book. Her work is known. Many of you guys listening now, I'm sure, have been following her and following her ministry, and very excited about this new iteration of Fierce Love and what it means for us right now. So thanks for joining us, and I'll turn it to Jacqui for an intro here. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jacqui Lewis, and I am the senior minister at Middle Collegiate Church. We're one church on 4 campuses. We date back to 1628. I'm a Common Good fan, have been on tour a little bit with the Common Good bus, bringing love and let's vote for justice out into the world. And I am thrilled to have this conversation today with this amazing set of co-hosts about Fierce Love, which just dropped yesterday.
Woo!
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you, Dan.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Well, why don't we jump into it? First, tell us just why Fierce Love to begin with. What prompted the writing of this, and then we'll get into some more specific questions. Where did this book come from?
Yeah, thank you, Dan. From my soul, but really from a broken heart, I think, a heart that's been really grieving American politics, American white supremacy and racism, American anti-Muslim, anti-Semitism sentiments, all in the name of a poor, at once homeless, refugee baby who was brown-skinned and a Jew from Palestine. It is interesting to me that God chose, our faith story says, to come all the way down to be with us in this particular body, in a marginalized body, maybe even a traumatized body. And in the name of that body, we have created the most toxic religion instead of the one that's grounded on love. So as I was grieving this over the last decade or so, especially, it was bubbling up in my soul to think, how could I preach about, talk about, write about love as a religion, a faith in a grown-up God, And I realized that I don't want to just talk about it inside the church. So I tried to push this book out of my body in a space that can be for people of faith and people of no faith, but to talk about love as the religion that will heal our world. And that love is fierce. So
Can you go just a little bit deeper in how you are operationalizing what love is, right? Because some may come to this and think about all of the things that you named around racism, anti-Semitism, and just classism, sexism, all these isms, and think that are we in this feel good moment once again, and asking people who have bore the burden of so many oppressions to just simply like come to this kumbaya place. So how are you operationalizing and using love in and of itself?
That's a great question, Stephanie, right? Because I'm not talking about, honestly, I'm not, this book, let me say, this book isn't about. This book is about turn the other cheek, status quo, suffering. This book is about the kind of love that I've learned from my ancestors that pushed back against systems, that stands up against powers and principalities, that is morally courageous and speaks the fierce truth about what's happening in the world and actually demands something different. I don't find Jesus as Placido Domingo guy. I find him as, that guy, he looks all
Mhm. Mhm.
and whatnot in the Renaissance
Mhm.
paintings. He's a
Mhm.
revolutionary. He's a rabble rouser. He is countercultural. He's breaking the cultural rules to pull
Mhm.
women in, to pull children in, to pull tax collectors and sinners in, to create a democratic table in which everyone is welcome. And that's the model for this ministry that I've been doing at Middle Church for the last 17 years, really pushing the envelope around LGBTQIA justice and women's rights to choose and children's rights to lead and voting rights and civil rights. I'm going to have to cough for a second, guys.
Mhm.
Allergic and talking too much. But this idea of the empired Jesus, the nice white guy Jesus, isn't who I'm following, isn't who I've been following. Middle has followed rebel Jesus, revolutionary Jesus,
Mm.
in
Mhm.
defeating the
Mhm.
poor and changing healthcare and working for a living wage and trying to dismantle some of the craziness at the border and Black Lives Matter and um, parent paid leave. Like these issues that are social issues to us feel like gospel issues. So the
Mhm.
gospel of fierce love is about that, Stephanie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of angles that really intrigue me about your book, Jackie. One are these great examples around various places in your life where you have been confronted and you've confronted others. And just the word confrontation is strong, right? It's a word that many of us want to turn from.
Yep.
Especially nice people in the church, right?
Yeah.
So I really would love for you to unpack that. But even prior to confrontation, um, and Dan said this in the early stages here, that there's this deep ethic of self love, this deep awareness that your capacity to love others has to be grounded in a reception that you've already had, right? You've already received this love, and that's allowing you to kind of be this centered person in the world.
Mhm.
Can you kind of unpack that a little bit?
Yes, I will. Yeah, the two threads that run through the book, let's say theological threads. One is love your neighbor as yourself.
Mhm.
And almost every world religion has some version of this, right? Love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus is asked by the rich young ruler or the scribe, which is the greatest of the commandments? And Jesus goes to Deuteronomy and goes to Leviticus and pulls these two laws, right? So love your neighbor as yourself. But it's an equal sign in the Greek language. Love neighbor, love self, connected by the word os, which is an equal sign. And I think in some ways, if not explicitly, almost always implicitly, the church has acted like the love self is the subordinate clause,
Mm.
Yes. Yeah.
right? And if it's the subordinate clause, you actually do end up loving your neighbor as yourself because you don't love yourself because that's not the emphasis at all. So how can we love our neighbor as ourself? How can we follow that command if on this side of the clause there's no self-love there? We've been
Right.
taught that's narcissistic. We've been taught that's navel gazing. We know we've been taught that that's braggadocious. But truly, the move I'm trying to make in this book and in my theology is if we are created in the divine image, And if, as the psalmist says, we're awesomely and wonderfully made, and if, as the writer of First John says, God is love, and everywhere love is, God abides in us where love is, then we hold the divine inside us. And if we're not going to love ourselves, I'm thinking that's actually a little blasphemous.
Mm.
It's actually a little bit undermines the great creative design that is us, made by God. And I don't know what happened, because I don't know that we would have done that, friends. But that whole I'm a worm theology, I mean, the psalmist is like, yes, I'm a worm, oh my God, oh my God. But that's when you had a bad day.
Right.
If you had a
Right.
bad day, you might feel like a worm. But to build a whole theological construct on we're nothing, God doesn't like us, God didn't pick us, Jesus had to die to save us wormy selves, to
Yeah.
me is a broken theology. And a redemptive theology is to pick up, I love me because God made me. I love me because I shine with God's glory. I love me
Yeah.
because I was designed a little lower than God to help heal the world.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? It's kind of a theology of self-hatred,
It
as
is.
you
It
just
is.
defined the total depravity of man, the Calvin tulip, right?
But right.
That's interesting. Well, and you also wonder if that theology emerged out of a place of people looking around and thinking, "Holy crap, this is a utter mess down here," and making sense of that and turning that inward as being a theology of self-hatred. Therefore, we need the holy, good, only out there, God to come in and save us from this mess that we've made of ourselves. So that's very
But we
helpful, Jacqui.
but we tend to find that in modern interpretations, modern Western white interpretations of Christianity. To
Right.
your point earlier, like almost every world religion has some form of the do unto others or do no harm, love
That's
as love
you want to
as
be loved. That's right.
yourself. And so I know, like, none of us here has the answer, but because we would all, like, have the resources that we need to do any and everything. But like, how did we get here? Like, really, how did we get here?
Yeah.
To this
Yeah.
deprecation and just disconnect with who God is within us and who God is.
Yeah, I wish I knew more about how we got here. I think I'm going to say the church historians probably have some insight on that more than I do, or the ecclesiology folk have some. But it feels to me like when religion becomes empired, when Constantine says this is now going to be the state religion, Christianity becomes a tool to manage the people,
Yeah.
the
Right.
regulars. And
Right.
and to manage the regulars, I'm just going all the way go crazy here. But if the question is, you regulars need a suzerain,
Hmm.
you people need a savior.
Hmm.
It's Caesar, right?
Hmm.
And I will take care of you. We'll put a wall around this city. We will
Hmm.
make sure you have a little something, something to eat.
Hmm.
We'll,
Right.
we will tax the hell out of you for that. But
Hmm.
that suzerain serf
Hmm.
dependency thing
Hmm.
becomes what the religion is.
Yeah.
It isn't this. It isn't equal. It isn't egalitarian. And
Mhm.
God's. I feel like we've been invited into partnership with God,
Yeah.
and I,
Co-creators.
co-creators
Hmm.
exactly. And so we can undo this. We
Hmm.
can rewire this. I think
Hmm.
womanist theology is a rewiring. I think mujerista theology, liberation theologies are rewiring. But patriarchy and whiteness is deep even inside the Black church, to where
Hmm.
there can be a substitution for who's the suzerain,
Hmm.
right? The male leader, not the female leader. We got
Hmm.
stuff to do, friends. It's going to
Hmm.
take other stuff to rewire it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's the work of redemption, isn't it? That's the inside out, right? It's the removal of the false self, the egoic self, the mask that we wear, the assumptions we've brought. That's the work of transformation, right? That's the Romans 12, 1 and 2
It
transformation.
is. It
Yeah.
is. And the black church doesn't have, like all the like license on patriarchy, right? It is white Christianity, sadly, that created Christianity in America. And I think we just need to sort of pay attention to that and ask all of ourselves, what kind of God, God did we create?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As,
Yeah.
as we think about transformation and the writing process, right? For so many authors, so many writers, they talk about the process itself. What aspects of your own self were transformed in the process of writing this book?
Yeah, that's a great question, Stephanie. Probably too many things to list. I mean, I've been working on this book for about 9 years, but I've been
Mm,
working on my life, for 62 years.
Mm.
57 of them consciously about being a Christian or a child of God, since I was 5. So I have really honestly let go of some of the child faith things. And I
mm,
don't mean to offend, but I had to let go of Jesus is the only way, the only truth, and the only life. If what we meant by that was a girl in China who would never know Jesus was destined for hell. That doesn't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
I let go of I'm horrible and I need a savior, and picked up I'm amazing and I'm not saved until everybody's saved.
mm,
Mm.
I let go of atonement through the mandated crucifixion of one's own child.
mm,
Mm.
Think
Hello.
about that for a minute.
Yeah. Hello.
Well, how that is lodged in so many places in family systems. Because if God can kill God's child
mm,
in a disciplinary process for all of us, think of the violence in families because of that. I let that go. And I'm more at one minute that Jesus' life reconciles us to God. And that
mm,
evil people killed Jesus because evil people kill people. And the God of Jesus and Rachel and Leah and Mary and Joseph raised Jesus so that death doesn't have the last word.
mm,
Those are some of the things that got transformed in me. And I fell in love with the God in me, and I fell more in love, therefore, with myself and more in love with God.
mm.
Yeah.
Jackie, I
One
was.
thing,
Oh,
Jackie,
go
that
ahead.
comes out. Oh, pardon me, Dan. Well, one thing that comes out in your book
Man in the room with
repeatedly
all these
here is
women.
this sense of you being enough,
Yeah,
of
yeah,
you being completely human. And
yeah.
completely human is all we need to be. You don't have to love perfectly. You don't have to lead perfectly. You don't have to forgive perfectly. It's perfectly imperfect, as a phrase, right?
Right.
Yeah.
We are enough. We are enough. Each of us is enough, and each of us is in process. And I really do believe that Jesus came to teach us the very best of what is human and what is divine. Absolutely believe that. But also, Jesus was enough to be
Yeah.
able to pray, God, my God, why are you forsaking me? Like all this Jesusness is about this intimate relationship with a holy parent who loves us as we are and also wants us to be better, which just makes sense.
Yeah. Jackie, I wanted to ask about your story growing up. You said in your bio you fell in love with God at an early age, but
Yeah.
also heard that women don't preach.
Right.
And so tell us about that journey of following rebel Jesus who breaks the rules
Yeah.
into becoming a preacher.
Yeah. Which breaks somebody's rule, right? Yeah. When I was somebody's rule, when I was about 7.5, almost 8 years old, I took communion for the very first time in our little Presbyterian church in Chicago. My dad was a deacon, so he was serving communion, and my mom was sitting next to me in the pew. And when the little bread came by, she whispers, "Jackie, this bread means God will always love you." And that was her explanation for it. Like my pastor was talking, I don't know what he was saying, but that was her definition for me as a child to take it. And that bread was so good. It was that Hawaiian sweet bread that they make the dips in. Like, God is, woo, this is delicious, and God loves me. And then the Welch's grape juice comes by, right? And this means God will never leave you. And I love grape juice. So the absolute Eucharistic, the taste of that takes me back to the smell of my mom,
Mm.
the Jergens lotion and the Windsong combo,
Mm.
a little Ultra Sheen up in there, Here's my maid. And all of those sensory things. So I'm in love with my mother. I'm in love with my dad. I'm in love with this God they're giving me that will always love me and never leave me. And I went on a journey through all the stuff that you go through. I didn't know I was evangelical, but you go through all the stuff of okay, now you can't and you can't and you can't,
Yeah.
and there's something wrong with you and there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with your girlness. There's something wrong with your womanness. There's something wrong with your period.
Yeah.
It's unclean. What? It's a whole journey through
Right.
to where I too felt my religious project was to stay holy so I can parachute out of here in the end times. And when I told people I felt called to ministry, my pastor and my dad, my first pastor, I said it to, and my dad, girls don't talk in church. Show me where it is. I don't know, but it's in there, type of thing. And so I was wounded by some of those boxes and rules, and so many children are in well-meaning families. So the box I broke out of, the time to get out, was a persistent calling, Dan, I would say, a persistent calling to preach, to do this work I'm clearly called to do. And to have mentors along the way who would go, oh, no, yes, of course. A woman named E. Valeria Murphy, she was like the E, older than time Black lady who took me around to denominational meetings because she saw my call. My Sunday school teacher, Mrs. Dixon, let me teach. She saw my call. Then my church made me an elder when I was 16 because they saw my call. And my pastor in Philadelphia who finally said, yes, girl, go. Please go to seminary. I see your call. And my pastor, Michael Livingston, who said, you're called not because you're perfect, but you're called because you're you. Those kinds of moments concretized my rebel to preach. And it cracks me up to think that women still have to walk through fire to preach.
Yes.
What's wrong with the church?
Yeah.
All the scriptures that we can focus on, and it's like women can't talk in church while you're eating a cheeseburger and criticizing her for talking in church, having shrimp cocktail while you pray about why she shouldn't talk in church, wearing a mixed fabric shirt while you're talking about her not talking in church. That's just cray. Sorry.
Yeah, right.
We need to come into the 21st century about our hermeneutic.
Yeah.
No.
And you made it out, or you made it over, as the elders would say. But everybody doesn't. And I am thinking about, again, of course, read the book, Fierce Love, right? But I am thinking about those who don't, or who are at the moment where they are paralyzed spiritually because they have been so boxed and chained and shackled in these ways, and not just in the church, but having to find the resilience within them. And right now I'm watching, most of America, or a lot of America, according to Netflix, I'm watching Colin in Black and White, right? Yeah. And there's one scene where young Colin is dealing with the racism that he grew up dealing with, and he asks of his adopted white parents, why am I always the one to have to be a bigger person?
Yeah.
So for those who are in that moment again, and we're trying to get this book in their hands, what do we say to them? What do we do for them? Or what is needed for them? Because I can imagine there are a number of young Collins who won't fight through it, who will not push through to be the bigger person, asking themselves, why am I always the one?
Yeah. Stephanie, thank you for that sermon that preaches, honey. Thank you for that question that evokes in me a deep memory of the first time I'm called the N word when I'm 5 years old. And just to say, like, to be Black in America, I'm sorry, y'all, to be Black in America is a unique hell. Psychologist Robert Carter says there are lots of differences and lots of reasons that we oppress each other, but race is a different difference. Black people can't pass for anything. We can't pass for white. We cannot pass through by without noticing the permanent nature of anti-Black racism in this nation. And yes, Indigenous people. Oh my God, right? Horrible what's happened. Yes, all this anti-Asian violence. Horrible what's happened. Yes, how we behave ourselves about good people coming into America at the border. Yes, all of that, all of that. So I'm not trying to do oppression Olympics. I'm trying to say Blackness in America is a particular beauty with which comes a particular burden. And I would say to the church, to the parents, to the people listening who are Black and coming through, going through, trying to get around this, there are so many resources about how white people can be anti-racist. And I'm saying this is a resource about you loving you. This is the intention. We decided not to call it How Black People Survive Whiteness in America, but we could have. We could have, because it has to be noted that this nation is not a container designed for your wellness and wholeness. It's a miracle that Colin becomes Colin. It's a miracle that Stephanie and I become who we are in this container. So how do we make the container better? And I would say that this podcast demographic is likely not the Black church all the time, but white people who are listening, you can make the container in America better by committing to anti-racism and not pretending that it's not a faithful choice. In other words, truth is politics. And we do have to hold up the common good as an end to our faith and our relationship with God. That's about how you vote. That's about how you spend your money. That's about where you live. It's almost Christmas, and y'all are all going to go shopping now for the stuff for the babies. It's about what kind of doll are you going to buy? Which American doll are you going to buy for your American princess? Why don't you get the Black one that looks like Harriet Tubman? What about diversifying the media your children consume? Sit down with your children and watch Colin in Black and White and talk about American racism. Don't pretend that colorblind is the way to heal it. It's not. Your child sees color. I say in the book, your child knows what color Teddy's eyes are and what color his hair is. And so talk about that. Like, oh, red hair, what does black, what kind of, put some meaning on the thing that they're noticing about skin tone and color and texture, because someone else is going to put meaning on it. So you could put meaning on it as a celebration of God's diversity. You could use times like Black History Month or King Day to really dive into some of these multiracial, multi-ethnic resources so your children are exposed. You have to have a zero tolerance about racism in your house. We don't use pronouns like they about them. Uncle Bob cannot call somebody the N-word and stay at your dinner table. That's how we have a revolution. So I'm saying, Stephanie, to white people to be accomplices, not just allies. And I'm saying to Black people, you're beautiful and amazing and gifted and shiny, and God loves you. And that is a whole muscle to develop of self-esteem and self-admiration in the context of American racism. And I got stuff for you to do in here to get there.
So Stephanie, building off Stephanie's comment around this identity piece, a love piece, a empowerment piece, and a confrontation piece. Can you move that into some
Yeah.
of your work here. Yeah. So unpack that for us.
Yes, yes, yes. I used to be so afraid of confrontation. Um, One, I'm a little girl taught that little girls are nice and they don't confront, and a girl child in a family that was a military family. Yes, sir, no, sir. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Otherwise, you're sassy,
Yeah.
and that was not met with warm hugs sometimes. Oh, my sassy child. They're there. That's not how we were raised. So I pretty I pretty I pretty much tell a few vulnerable stories in the book about
Yeah.
becoming a person who learns how to confront, and learning how to confront made me an activist. I talk about being a little girl whose classmate calls her the N-word when I'm 5, and my mom tells me racism is silly, and we pray about it, which is beautiful. One act of intervention was, that is so silly that someone thinks that you're not good because you're Black. Ha! That's broken. And we pray about it, and I pray that no matter how people look, they will know they're loved. My dad goes to the base commander and demands an apology from the father to my dad, from the girl to me. That was fierce love, Dad.
Uh-huh.
And it's in me. That's what you do. You don't roll over on people without a confrontation. And poor Daddy, the thing he taught me how to do. I turned it on him a few times too, right?
Yes.
It sounds like it, right?
We can't. Oh,
You
we
tell that story too.
We do, right? So he's picking on my sister one time. Poor thing. They were locked in. A lot of battles in those days, because she was sassy, right? Because she was just being honest. She was being honest, and he was just kind of giving her a hard time. And I was like, "Hey, you can't. Don't talk to her like that. That's not good. If you do that, she's going to end up looking for a father someplace else." And I was so right.
Mm.
And I said it so gently, I was so gentle because I was a teenager. And Dad and I, we had a close encounter, right? That was intense and hurtful and violent, and that stayed between us for a little while, as it should. But also, I didn't stop confronting him. And at a graduation party for my PhD, my dad is not being kind to my friend, and my friend leaves the party, which was its own kind of confrontation. And I confronted my dad about how you treat a 45-year-old grown woman in her world, in her house, in her church. And it was probably that confrontation that rewired my relationship with my dad. So 2 weeks ago, I was home for his birthday and rushed in his house to do a podcast, and came out to the kitchen table to find my dad has set a Eucharist for me, a communion table. Fried chicken, thighs, not breasts, because ill with the breasts, they're too dry, and potato salad and coleslaw and a glass of rosé. And he just has it ready for me. Not sure I was going to make it, but hoping I'd make it. And sat with me and held my stories and my excitement about the book, and just loved on me, right? With this just dad expansive love. We lost our mom 4 years ago, so I feel like Dad mommies us. He channels mom for all of us. And the good news is my dad is my friend and loves me unconditionally in this day. And I love him that way as well. And so in a way, the book is a shout out to our wrestling to this point. And not to like embarrass him, old Black man, he ain't trying to be embarrassed, but to celebrate that he at 87 became, right? He has become over the decades, is a nurturing, loving dad to me and my sister and my brothers, because people do transform. And confrontation, sometimes I call it carefrontation, helps the people we love us better. It will help the nation love us better. If we can learn how to do it without like threatening memes of like slicing up AOC because you disagree with her, like what the hell is going on?
Right.
We just
Right.
cannot be accepting that kind of anger and violence and vitriol. We have to confront that as well.
Yeah, I think what was particularly powerful in your stories of confrontation was that the relationship is worth it. And
Yeah.
I think that's what we need to hear again, that the relationships are worth it, that we've got to cling to them doggedly. We've got to pour ourselves into them. We have to be willing to confrontation. I like both those words in some ways. But we've got to do it because the result is good enough to seek, right? It's good
Yeah.
enough to seek and to give ourselves to.
Yeah.
And it feels like that's the place where I think some of us are throwing in the towel, whether it's in churches that disagree or whether it's in families that just, you know what, I am not going to deal with you anymore. We've started to just kind of give up on those relationships, and
Yeah.
I feel like fierce love speaks into that space, Jacqui.
It does. It does. And I want to nuance that. I mean, there are so many people that are going to go home for the holidays and be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I can't do you."
Right.
I can't do it. So, what kind of norms do you need to set before you get home so you can do each other?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not going to cuss each other. We're not going to yell at each other. We're going to disagree if we need to quietly. We're going to avoid the topic, whatever that is, because those times are precious and priceless, and we haven't had them.
Yeah.
So I'm going to nuance there, but I also want to say there are some relationships, everything we love, Alice Walker writes, everything we love can be saved. And I'm going to say that's not exactly true. There are also some relationships that cannot be saved. I'm saying that as a pastor who believes in relationships. If
Yeah,
you're in a
good.
relationship in which someone is hurting you, hitting you, violating you, if you're in a relationship where you can't love yourself, no one is requiring you to stay there. The church isn't requiring you to stay there. God is not requiring you to stay there. Holy doesn't require you to stay there. That's why love yourself.
Yeah.
That's why put your mask on first. So I just want, in case someone's in a space where
good.
they're like, really, I need to stay here? Heck no.
No,
Right.
that's right. That's right. And those
Right.
ground rules are so important. You talk about the ground rules in different language in the book, but there's still that the James Baldwin quote that you use there. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. That's
That's
I
kind
just
of
felt
like
like
the
that was
gospel, isn't it? It's the
yeah, right. It's so good, and it's so it just kind of cuts through a lot of the cloud of kind of I don't even want to have to think about you or think about that or think about how you are when you do this. You know, it just kind of cuts through that and demands of me what is mine to face in this relationship. And what is mine not to face, right? I mean, the other side of that too. Yeah.
It's really good. I love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so we hope that as you all are listening, we've heard from some of our viewers that they will buy this book and give it as Christmas presents. I'm sure we can find it everywhere online where books are sold.
Yeah.
Everywhere. And is there an audio version as well?
There is. There's an audio version. There's a version in Great Britain. So if you want to buy that, there's a Kindle version. And just to say, friends, if you're buying the book, buy it before the 13th of November, if you can. Because when you do that, you signal to the publisher, to the world, that the book is worth buying. And 10% of every dollar I make from the book, including my advance, has already gone to Middle Church to help us rise from the fire. So there's a twofer. You can have a fierce love in your world and give it to your Uncle Bob and say, child, read chapter 3, okay?
Yeah, right.
But also, you are helping my congregation rise again from the fire if you buy, and that would be beautiful.
Awesome.
Whoop. Somebody.
Well, Jacqui, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. And listeners, viewers, get the book. I love this comment from Frank Schaefer. He says, when men are finally allowed to mother, we will be transformed.
That's
That's
right.
great.
Thank you,
And
Frank.
yeah, shout out to Genesis B in the chat as well.
Genesis! We killed at Joe's Pub.
She says, fierce love.
Fierce love. You know you got to have some. I'm going to get Jody Watley to make a new version of that song.
Yes.
But thank you so much. And we'll see everyone this weekend. The We the People ride is finishing up November 14th. We're going to have a live stream event for that. So be on the lookout for that. But thank you so much. And we'll see everybody else next week. Take care, everybody.
All. Thank you for this robust conversation.
Yep.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.